Welcome to Communication Performance. This is the second video in the series of the analysis of 1 times 1 equals 2, which we believe, or I believe is correct, versus 1 times 1 equals 1, which I believe is incorrect. As far as communication performance is concerned, this is our unincorporated nonprofit where we disseminate information to the public or anyone interested in visiting our channel and watching our videos. But we also have a consultancy, which is communication performance consultancy, which is our for-profit uh, business that we help individuals that may have issues with any type of contracts. Our motto is that we um, correct contracts written by attorneys. That is our motto, and so we don't discriminate. Whatever contract it is, it could be an indictment, it could be a mortgage contract, it could be an automobile contract. What we do, what we specialize we specialize in taking apart contracts. So on this channel, we're going to discuss banking, but initially we're doing the 1 times 1 equals 2 analysis, just to bring you into our world of possibilities and how we're going to approach um, different topics on this channel. So on this channel, we're going to discuss banking. We're going to discuss money. What is money and the different instruments that you can use to make payments or discharge debt obligations. We're going to talk about bank payment processing systems. We're going to talk about banking laws, rules, and regulations. We're also going to talk about general laws such as traffic, um, criminal law, civil law, and because we're going to talk about law, we also have to talk about history because a lot of times history is a precursor to laws being made. On the channel, we're going to talk about contracts. We're going to talk about how these contracts impact your life. We're going to take apart contracts. As I said before, that's what we do at Communication Performance Consultancy. We take apart contracts, we show the flaws. A lot of you have contracts that you are currently paying for right now, making payments on. Contracts uh, is an integral part of our lives, and so I think it's very important for us to have a discussion on contracts, talk about how to interpret contracts, um, different contract laws that may be of benefit to you. Um, we'll also show you how to take apart contracts, how to read them and give proper interpretation of them. So we're going to discuss contracts a lot on this channel. We're going to also discuss math. We're going to discuss basic math. We're not going to get into any high level stuff, but the math that we're going to discuss on this channel is tied into the accounting system that we've developed. So definitely we're going to discuss that. Our accounting system is tied into the banking system that we've developed, and the accounting and banking system is tied to our quantum linguistic system that we've developed or um, or organized. On this channel, we're also going to talk about linguistics. This channel is going to be centered around linguistics. Just generally, everything that we do is going to be based on linguistics, and we're going to pivot into different areas, whether it's law, whether it's banking, whether we're talking about money, whether we're talking about contracts. We're going to pivot from linguistics generally. And so, because we're talking about these various topics, we're going to talk about stuff on this channel or things on this channel that is contrary to what you have been programmed, conditioned, or trained to believe. And we're going to, you know, give you empirical evidence of what we say. So we're just not going to give you our opinion. We're going to back up our opinion. So we're going to talk about the possibilities of what could be. We're going to spring from what is, talk about what could be, what should be. Um, we're not going to arrest ourselves to the philosophy of we've always done this, so this is how we're going to always do it. Because what we've always done can be the wrong way that we're doing it. So on this channel, we're going to chase facts. We're going to chase perfection in the sense of correctness, right? Or being correct. We want to be correct. So if anyone hear us say anything on this channel or hear any guest on this channel say anything that you think is incorrect or you disagree with, we welcome you to give us some information backed by evidence. We would also like you to diagram that evidence, do a video, diagram that evidence so we can follow you based on the evidence that you're providing and also the lecture that you're providing, and you tie both of those things together with a diagram of your position. So we welcome any type of correctness because our goal is to be correct, right? So we're going to continue with the analysis. And this particular video, we're going to analyze 0 times 1 equals 0 and 1 times 0 equals 0. I'm going to show you that these two equations are void equations, and based on the definition of multiplication, they should not even be classified as equations, right? So let's go ahead and get started. I've already written a diagram on the whiteboard, so this is going to make the video go a little bit faster, and it's also gonna I wanted to make sure that I don't miss anything. So let's get started. So we're doing 1 times 1 equals 0, right? So as I've diagrammed in the first video, and if you guys didn't get a chance to take a look at the first video, I would definitely recommend that you go ahead and take a look at the first video. And that's 1 times, the title is 1 times 1 equals 2. So in this analysis, right, we have 0, which is our first position. We have the 1, which is our second position. And then we have our conclusion, which is the answer, right? So here, when we're told that 1 times 1, I'm sorry, 0 times 1 equals 0, the rationale is 0, 1 equals 0. So if you're saying 0, 1 equals 0, on the left side of the equal sign, what are you really saying, right? So let's take a look at this right here. So if you say 0, 1, what you're really saying is you have a 0, right? You said 0, 1, so there's no 1, right? This is the numeration. The numeration is right here, right? Which is the first position, which is here. And then the second position is supposed to be the value. But in this particular instance, since your description in the first position is 0, and then your second position, you have, hang on one second for me. In your second position, you have a 1, right? But this is telling you the value. The first position is telling you the value in the second position. So here it's saying that you have 0, 1, which means that you have 0, right? That's the answers. So basically it's saying that there's nothing on this side, right? So let's continue. So if we go down, the first position is the description of the 1, right? The 0 is describing or the numeration or the counting telling us the value of the second position. Now, although you see a 1 here, which we would generally attribute to a value, right? But here it's telling us that there's no value. The first position is telling us that there's no value in the second position because you have 0, 1, right? So let's give you a better understanding. So let's say you have 1, 1. So that means that you have 1 because this is describing and telling you what this is, right? So let's say if you had 2, 1. That means that you have 2, 1. Let's say you have 3, 1. So you have 1, 2, 3, 1, right? So you have the description, value, and then you have the conclusion, right? Or you can have the rationale and the logic. So the rationale, like here, the rationale is saying 3, 1. So the logic is that you have 3 ones. But if you look up here where the rationale is 0, which means nothing, right? Or no thing, right? And that's yeah. We also have to recognize that the 0 is an issue when it comes to the law of conservation of energy. Because what this equation is basically telling us is that this equation destroys this equation 0 times 1 equals 0 is telling us that energy can be destroyed. And we know that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, right? From the time that the Creator, the Ancient of Days, created energy, from that particular point on forward, energy cannot be created or destroyed. And that is my sense of things, right? So this particular equation, 0 times 1 equals 0, if we recognize this 1 as a value, then we have to conclude that this equation violates thermodynamics, right? The first law of thermodynamics violates the law, um, uh, the law of conservation of energy. And what I rest the law of conservation of energy on is the principles of um, the law of conservation of energy demonstrated in the Bible, such as first death, the second death, resurrection of Christ, and everlasting life. And that's those principles are prevalent throughout the Bible, right? So since the Bible is first, then we have to give credit to the Creator for the law of conservation of energy, that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Um, but on a mundane perspective, we can uh, also say that the law of conservation of energy um, from a scientific perspective. But anyway, either case, 0 times 1 equals 0. If we're saying that this has value, if this 1 has value, then the conclusion over here, which is 0, we're saying that this equation, based on this equation, energy can be destroyed, which is, I believe, false. The other thing about this equation, if we focus on the 0, what is a 0? The 0 is telling us that it's a nothing, right? Um, it's telling us, if it's telling us that there is nothing, right? So it's saying nothing, or let me see where I have it here. Yeah, so I have nothing times nothing equals nothing, right? That's also a problem, right? From a different perspective, um, other than if people are saying that this is a value, then I'm saying that this equation is telling us that the law of energy can be destroyed, which is false, as far as I understand the principles in the Bible and also physics. Um, and I would have to say my amateur understanding of physics. But anyway, so if you have nothing, first of all, this 0 is, it is invalid. This 0 is invalid because it represents nothing, right? And there is no such thing as nothing in this universe, right? Because the universe is made up of light, mass, motion, energy, which consumes the universe. I don't see that there is, well, I don't believe that there is any empty space or nothing. I don't believe nothing or empty space exists in our universe because we have light, mass, motion, energy that consumes the universe, right? And one of the examples that I give is Maxwell Chukwuembuto. I might be butchering his name, but this guy created a self-propelled um, engine. He also created um, self. Well, he created a family house that can be run or um, that can be energized. We use that term. That can be energized or powered without electricity. He invented a car that could be powered without electricity or gas. He invented TV that can be powered without electricity. He invented a motorbike that could be powered without electricity. He even have a generator that does not use any type of gas uh, or electricity. His source of power is radio waves, right? He collects it from the atmosphere, right? He's collecting energy from the atmosphere. So energy is all around us. So there's no such thing as nothing or an empty space in the universe, right? It doesn't exist. And those are only, and that's one of the things that we understand that we can use as a source of power or fuel, right? So getting back to this, so those are two things. First thing is, if we're saying that this is a value, then we have to admit that this equation 0 times 1 equals 0 is telling us that energy can be destroyed, which is false. That's a false assumption. So, based on the law of conservation of energy alone, this problem is wrong. This is a void equation. The other thing is based off of um, the law of conservation of energy, zero um, cannot be used in an equation, right? Specifically a multiplication equation, because the definition of multiplication is to increase in number, right? We would combine these two these two elements and make it into something different on the right side of the equal sign, right? So we're combining on the left, making something new on the right. But you can't increase in number if you have nothing here, right? And then the equation is telling us that if we recognize this as a value and we combine these two to increase in number, then this is going to cancel out that. And that's how come we would get a nothing or zero, right? This equation makes no sense. But anyway, let's continue with our analysis. So on the first position, or rather the left side of the equal sign, we have our rationalization, which is 0, 1. And what is that 0, 1 telling us? The 0, 1 is telling us that the conclusion is we have 0. So, or the logic is telling us that we have 0. So our rationale is 0, 1, right? The rationale is 0, 1, which is giving us the description of the 1, right, on the left side of the equal sign. And it gives us a conclusion of nothing or 0, which is the rationale give us a logic of 0, right? And what the rationale is telling us that you have nothing in the first position with the 0, and it's saying that nothing is producing nothing in the second position, right? Because there's no counting or increasing with the first position and the second position, because you have 0, 1. So the 0 is telling us that in the 0 in the first position is telling us that the 1 in the second position has no value. It is nothing because you have 0, 1. Such as you have 0, 1 here, the conclusion is 0. You have 1, 1, the conclusion, or if the rationale is 1, 1, then the logic is 1, or the answer is 1. If you have 2, 1, then the rationale 2, 1 equals the logic of 2 1s over here, right? If you have the rationale 3, 1, then the logic is 1, 2, 3 1s, right? But this is saying 0, 1. So on the left side of the equal sign, it is telling us that in the first position there is nothing. In the second position there is nothing. So how can you increase in number a nothing, right? You can't. You can't do that because nothing times nothing equals nothing. And as a matter of fact, you can't even do a multiplication with nothing, other than the fact that it is clear that the concept of nothing does not exist in the universe, right? Because energy, light, is all around us, right? And if you have energy, then you have oscillation, you have movement, right? So in the first position, there's no value because you have a nothing, a 0, which is a void concept. And then in the second position, because the first position is the rationalization or the description of the second position, then it's also telling you that there's no value in the second position either, right? So the numeration in the first position is telling us there's no value in the second position. So if you have no value in the first position, then you have no light and no mass. And if you have no value in the second position, then you have no light and no mass. Then you have nothing on the left side of the equal sign. Now, if you have nothing on the left side of the equal sign, if we were to convince ourselves that 0 times 1 equals 0 with the rationalization that nothing times nothing equals the logic of nothing, then on the left side of the equal sign we have nothing, and then on the right side of the equal sign we also have nothing, and that is a void equation. We cannot classify this as an equation because there's no, well, specifically as a multiplication equation, there's no increase in number, right? And then the other thing is you're saying if you recognize this as a value, then you're saying that this equation can destroy energy because this as a value, if we're saying this is a value, is not accounted for on the right side of the equal sign. And then the other thing is the zero is a void concept because there's no such thing as a nothing or zero equals nothing, right? There's no such thing as a void concept of nothing in the universe because light, mass, motion, energy consumes the universe, right? It's all around us. Um, so we definitely see that this equation is void on multiple levels, right? And this is basically what I would refer to as an evisceration principle of energy, right? Because you're saying if you recognize this as a value, you're saying that you can destroy energy. Now, let's say if you recognize this is not a value because the zero is telling you what is here or what's the value here. So it's saying 0, 1, right? Suppose you say you have 0 cars. Do you have a car? No. Suppose you say you have no car. Right? Suppose you say you have 5 cars. That means you got 5 equals 5 cars, right? Um, yeah, so that equals 5 cars. If you say you have 2 cars, then you got over here on the left side of the equal sign, you would say that you got 2 cars. Let me make this a little bit more plain. Okay, so if you say you got 0 cars, right? That's your rationale. So the logic would be you have nothing. And there's no concept of nothing, so this concept would be void, right? So if you say you have, this is negative language, right? A negative language cannot, a negative language should not exist in a positive universe, right? And why do I say the universe is positive? Because we have light, mass, motion, energy that consumes the entire universe. It is all around us. Energy is all around us. And if you have energy, you have oscillation, you have movement, right? So let's say if you say one car, that means you got one car, right? So rationalization, one car, then your logic is, or answer or conclusion is one car, right? You say you got two friends, and you got two friends, right? You couldn't see, you can't see the answer, but I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. Let me try to make it a little bit smaller so you can see. So if you have zero money, oh, let's say $0, then you have nothing, right? If you have one, let's say you have $1, your rationalization is $1, right? You have description, value, or you have in your first position, you have counting. Your second position tells you the value, right? So you have $1, then you have $1, right? So let's say you have $2, then you would have $2, right? Or fake $2 bill, or you could say this: you have two $1 bills, right? You got two $1 bill, right? If you say you got three pennies, then you got one, two. I haven't wrote a penny. Is that a penny? Okay, let's do it this way. So you just got one. So you got one, two, three pennies, right? Look more like a seven, right? So uh, hope we hope I explained this concept right here as far as the rationalization and logic, the description, um, telling us the value, right? Which the description is basically nothing, describing, telling us that the value in the second position is nothing. So the logic is going to be zero, which is nothing, right? That's not an equation. The zero or nothing is a void concept. And then the third thing is this equation, if we believe that this is a value, then it would be telling us that energy can be destroyed, right? And which would violate the laws of conservation of energy that's solidified throughout the text of the Bible, that's solidified in the first law of thermodynamics that's solidified in the law of conservation of energy, right? So this equation is void, right? One, I'm sorry, 0 times 1 equals 0 is void. That's a void equation. So let's look at the other equation, right? Let's look at this equation, which is um, 1 times 0 equals 0, right? It's the same thing. We don't even have to change our diagram here because it's telling us the same thing. Because if you have 1, 0, what's 1, 0? You got 0, right? If you got two zeros, you still got 0, right? If you got three zeros, you still have 0. I don't think I need to diagram that, right? Let me just, okay. Let's say if you got five zeros or 50, right? This is your rationale. You got your um, description, or we'll call this the adjective, and then um, we'll just call this a noun because this is not a fact, right? So, from a linguistic perspective, describing, you got your adjective in the first position, and it's telling you the value in the second position, right? And so the rationale here, right? This and this is your rationale or rationalization. And then you have your logic, which is your answer. So if you have five zeros, then your logic is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, which equals nothing. Or this is this equals nothing, right? So your rationale gives you your logic. So the rationale is adjective describing the noun, right? And so the rationale is five zeros, which equals the logic of nothing. And so this equation confronts the same three or four flaws or avoidance. And when I say a when I say voidance or avoidance, I mean um, lack validity, right? It lacks validity. We, from a quantum linguistic perspectives or quantum linguistic perspective, we don't use the a because a single sound in vowel means no, such as a symmetrical, right? Versus being symmetrical. So if we say void, that also means lacking validity or void of verification or lack of verification. No, void of validity. Yeah, I think that's more straight to the point, right? We don't say void as in nothing or black hole because there's no such thing as nothing or black hole in a universe where everywhere has light, mass, motion, energy, which consumes the universe, right? So here in the first position, you have no light and you have no mass, right? Because it's telling you have 1 0. So effectively, on the left side of the balance sheet, under the second position, you have no value, you have no light, and you have no mass. So what does that equals? It combines to equal nothing. So you can't increase in value, no light, no mass, enumeration that has no value, and the second position that has no value, right? So this means that you have no fact because you have a nothing on the left side of the balance sheet. And if you have a nothing in the first position plus the second position equals nothing, then on the right side of the balance sheet, you're going to have a nothing as well, right? You're going to have a nothing. So I believe that you cannot use a zero in any math problem. And if you're saying that any number times zero, and let's say you're saying that this is a value, right? Any number times zero equals zero, I would say that's flawed. Because if you're saying that, suppose you say 2 times 0 equals 0, right? Then I would say that's flawed because you're violating the laws of physics, you're violating the law of conservation of energy, and you're not accounted for this value that's on the left side of the equal sign on the right side of the equal sign, right? So any number times zero cannot equal zero. For first of all, there zero is a void concept. It doesn't exist within this universe. And the second thing is, if you're saying that this is nothing, then wouldn't you have to carry over this value, right? So if you have an equation that says 0 times, actually, it's not an equation, so that'd be a waste of time. This is 0, 1 times 0 equals 0, and 0 times 1 equals 0 are not equations, right? They're void concepts. They're void mathematical concepts. So that concludes the analysis of 1 times 0 equals 0 and 0 times 1 equals 0. So this video, or this portion of the video, concludes the series of 1 times 1 equals 2, which is correct, and 1 times 1 equals 1 is incorrect. 0 times 0, or rather 1 times 0 equals 0 is a void equation, just as one times 0 times 1 equals 0 is a void equation, right? So this video is going to propel us into what this channel is going to be about: banking, contracts, law, linguistics. So this leads us into what we're going to one of the topics that we're going to be talking about a lot, which is money. And here I say money has no value, right? And actually, I wouldn't even write it as money has no value, because this phrase is a negative phrase within a positive performant performing universe, or positive performance universe, right? So what I would say is, from a quantum linguistic perspective, right, making this into a positive phrase, or well, um, making this into a more positive phrase, right? Because there's different levels, right? So we're just going to say money is uh, void. Money is void of value, right? Or we could say money is with the or we could say money is with the voidance of and then we got to put for the, right, for the money for the money of the banks is with the voidance of the value, right? And actually, we would actually change this to be more specific. For the bank credit, for the bank credit of the banks is with the voidance of the value. Why do we say that? Or why do I say that rather? Because 1 times 1, whoops, because 1 times 0 equals 0, and 0 times 1 equals 0, right? So the software that the banks use is computer generated based off of ones and zeros, right? Isn't that primarily what computer coding is made up of? And if we're talking about a virtual system that is used as a ledger, which many people equate to as credit, which is, or the blockchain that people equate to as credit, based off of the accounting system, the virtual accounting system of the banks, then what are the conclusion that we come to that for the credit of the banks is with the avoidance of the value, right? Because 1 times 0 equals 0, 0 times 1 equals 0. So what is this telling you? Mathematically, it's telling us that money has no value. And more specifically, this equation is telling us that the concept is void, right? And this is why, because we know that the money is not, is has no, well, I don't want to plunge the stock market, but this is why the money is based off of the confidence of the people, right? The bank credit is based off the confidence of the people rather than the metric system, right? So bank credit is distinct from legal tender. So you have bank credit and then you have legal tender. We're going to talk about this when I explain student loan funding and how the student is engaged in the funding of the loan. Legal tender is converted into this bank credit. And what is bank credit? Bank credit is created based off of contracts, right? You is created off of contracts. And the source for this particular information is from the Federal Reserve itself. And once we, in the next video, hopefully we get into it, and I'll definitely have sources for you to go take a look at and verify what I'm saying. But this is just an intro to what's coming. So we're going to deal with banking. Then we're going to hopefully jump into student loans and then take off from there. But I think that this channel is going to be a channel with a wealth of information. I'm going to give you sources and empirical data. I'm going to give you empirical analysis. So we're not going to be chasing correctness based off of opinion. We're going to be chasing correctness based off of fact, right? And that way we could be perfect in our understanding of the information and achieve correctness. And if we're not correct, we welcome anyone out there to correct us. But the only thing that we ask is do a video, send it to us, and in the video, provide your sources, provide your evidence, and diagram your evidence and tie it into your lecture, right? Don't just give us a sermon or smooth words based off of your knowledge of the topic. We want you to demonstrate what you're saying, not reprogram us by just giving us smooth words and giving us a lecture that sounds intelligent. We want to actually see you diagram it so we can not only hear but see and come to a conclusion. So you can send any type of communication, whether it's email. Well, you could send an email, whether it's text or video or both, to contract PC, P as in Paul, C as in cat, 7213 at gmail.com. Right? Contract PC 7213, one word, at gmail.com. And we welcome your input. Thank you so much. See you in the next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, whether you let us know if you hate it. We love our haters as well. We need haters. Thank you.